you. I call Eugenie Sage.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker, and thank you, and I will endeavour to do that. But it is important to recognise that in these Statutes Amendment Bills, which are intended to be non-controversial, and I thank Honourable David Parker for his explanation during the committee stages about the changes to standing orders, which generally disallow omnibus changes to legislation, but do make exceptions for Statutes Amendment Bills. And it is because that they are non-controversial and they're intended to be small technical changes to legislation that they're quite different from other bills before this House, because if one single MP opposes it, then it doesn't proceed. And the Green Party exercised that right recently because it was proposed through Supplementary Order Paper number 50 to this bill to change the Members of Parliament Remunerations and Services Act 2013 to increase the travel benefits for MPs that had entered Parliament prior to 1999. And to the Green Party, that looked to be both substantive and controversial, and it had no place in a Statutes Amendment Bill. Therefore, we opposed it, and, Mr Speaker, it's not in the bill. And I think, Mr Speaker, if that process applied to other legislation, where we had to have consensus of all the parties, legislation would be less partisan and it would be much more enduring, and you wouldn't get the changes that are made by different governments as they get into Parliament. So there are major advantages in a Statutes Amendment Bill because it does have the agreement of all of the House. But, Mr Speaker, I'd like to comment on some of the changes that the bill makes to the Official Information Act. And they may seem small, but they are significant. One of them is that if someone asks the department, a minister or an agency, which the Official Information Act covers, for information orally, then the department or agency can ask that this be put in writing. But if that person, the requester, doesn't do that, then the department has got to record their understanding of the request and then provide a copy to the requester. It also makes other changes to the Official Information Act to clarify that requests for information can be made in any form. They don't need to refer to the Act. And it also puts it in doubt that agencies, ministers and departments can provide the information to requesters in an electronic form. Another improvement in the bill is to allow the Ombudsman to hear complaints under the Act when an agency has failed to decide a request as soon as reasonably practicable. But these sorts of changes, Mr Speaker, are entirely consistent with the spirit and intent of the Official Information Act, which is to promote open government. And as the Dominion Post said in an article last year, that access to good information is not just some theoretical nicety, it's the oil that makes democracy work. And it's because government agencies are acting theoretically on our collective behalf. We fund them through our taxes, so we've got every right to expect that they tell us what they are doing and that they respond promptly to requests for information. The original Official Information Act was introduced under the Muldoon government, but the way that it's currently administered under this government shows what a blatant disregard National has for the Act's history, for the principles which informed it, because we see now major delays in the release of information, pages and pages of redactions when the information is finally released. So the government has certainly strayed a long way from National's original values of ensuring that there are effective checks on the power of the state and ensuring that the state is accountable. And David Fisher had a significant speech late last year which described some of those changes and how, when he started out as a journalist, you could just ring someone in a government department and ask for information and it was provided. Now that doesn't happen, and we have the Prime Minister saying last October that ministers sometimes waited 20 days to respond because the government might take the view that it's in their best interest to do that. So that's a real corruption of the spirit and intent of the legislation. This bill will not fix that. So the only thing that we have to hope for is that the Chief Ombudsman, Dame Beverly Wakeham, and her review of the way in which the Official Information Act is being implemented will result in some quite substantive changes and recommendations for change to the Act to try and restore public confidence in the effective operation of the Official Information Act, because it is so critical. It is the essential oil of our democracy, and the government needs to listen to the Chief Ombudsman's recommendations when they come through, and it would be good if the public availed itself of the opportunity to make submissions to that review on how the Act is working, because this bill makes some minor changes, but they won't correct that erosion of the spirit and intent of the Act, with ministers sitting on information, major delays in its release and major redactions. But the Green Party will support this bill for the small changes it does make in that area. Thank you, Mr Speaker.